Logan stood on the hill and looked at the enemy army that stretched across the valley. The soldiers were many, and their weapons were sharp and strong, but Logan did not feel fear. He felt a fire inside him that made him ready for what was coming. He called to Claire and told her to watch the movements of the enemy and report everything she saw. Claire nodded and climbed the trees to get a better view. She saw the soldiers moving in lines and some carrying large shields and long spears. She ran back to Logan and told him exactly what she saw. Logan smiled, because he knew. Now he could make a plan that would use their strength against them. He called Eric and Mia and explained his thoughts. Eric was good with the bow and could hit targets from far away. Mia could think ahead and plan traps for the soldiers. Logan told them that the key was not to fight all at once, but to use the land and their minds. To win, they walked along the hills and forests and found paths that the enemy would not notice. They dug small trenches and made fake camps to trick the enemy soldiers. They even used flags to make the enemy think they were moving in one direction, while they were really moving somewhere else. Logan's plan was careful and slow. He wanted every step to be safe yet strong. The soldiers under him learned. Quickly they followed his orders and began to understand how small moves could lead to big wins. Logan also made sure to talk to the villagers. They were scared, but they wanted to help. Hannah gave them food and water, while Luke shared information about the hills and forests he had seen the enemy soldiers walk through before at night. Logan called his group. Together, they sat near the fire and shared stories and laughed a little to forget the fear that tried to stay inside them. Logan told them that courage was not about being unafraid. It was about moving forward. Even when afraid, he explained that their minds were stronger than swords, and that if they used them wisely, they could make the enemy tired and confused before they could even strike. The next day, Logan sent small groups to different hills to watch the army and to send signals if anything changed. He and Mia planned to place hidden traps where the enemy would pass the most. Logan also made Eric train a few young archers so that when the enemy came close, they could shoot arrows to slow them without putting anyone in real danger. He taught them to think ahead and watch for changes in wind and sun, because these could help them hide and aim better. As days passed, Logan learned more about the enemy movements. He noticed that they repeated some paths and rested at the same spots. He marked these places and planned small attacks that would surprise them without risking many of his men. He used sticks and stones to make noises that seemed like large attacks and watched the enemy move into positions that made them vulnerable. Logan and his friends also made maps to remember every small detail, because in war even one mistake could be deadly. Logan also spoke to the human Queen Victoria through messages. He told her not to worry, and that the city would be safe if his plan worked. She sent some guards to help, and they brought more supplies. Logan made them understand that every person counted, and that everyone could help. Even if they were not soldiers, he gave small tasks to children and older people, like carrying messages or watching from towers. Logan believed that using the minds of many was better than relying on only a few strong fighters. One night, the enemy made a move that no one expected. They tried to sneak through a forest to reach the city. Quickly, Logan had already guessed this because he noticed the way their scouts moved earlier. He sent Eric and the archers to a hidden hill, and Mia led a small group to block the path with traps. When the enemy came, they were slowed and confused. They did not expect resistance so soon. The archers shot arrows that landed near the enemy soldiers, forcing them to stop and rethink their move. Logan watched from a distance and smiled, because his careful planning worked. After this event, the soldiers under Logan became more confident. They trusted his mind and his decisions even more. The villagers also felt safer, because they could see that the enemy could be controlled and tricked instead of just being strong. Logan spent nights thinking about the next step. He did not want to rush, but he also knew time was important. The longer they waited, the more the enemy could gather and become stronger. Logan's genius was in using every small advantage he could find. He used the land, the minds of his friends, the courage of the villagers, and even the mistakes of the enemy to create a plan that would make a big army seem weak. He taught everyone that intelligence could protect life and that patience could win battles without large bloodshed. The young boy Luke and girl Claire learned from Logan that thinking ahead and watching carefully were as important as having strong weapons. Logan knew that the next part of his plan would need even more care, and he was ready to lead his people through it. Logan gathered his soldiers early in the morning. He spoke calmly and firmly. He told them that today, they would make the enemy think that they were weaker than they were. He asked Eric to take some archers and hide on the hill so they could watch and send signals. Logan explained that the enemy had grown careless, and they would make mistakes that could be used to their advantage. Mia led a small group to build decoy camps. They put tents and fires in open fields to trick the enemy into thinking that Logan's army was staying there. Logan also told the villagers to carry baskets and move around the decoy camps. So it looked busy and strong. They wanted the enemy to see activity and believe the army was large and ready for attack. Logan and his closest men, including Eric and Mia, walked quietly along the forest paths. They looked for high ground and hidden valleys. They found a place near a river where they could block enemy soldiers without facing the full army. Logan studied every tree and rock. He planned signals with stones and mirrors so that the groups could communicate without shouting or giving away positions. He sent Claire and Luke to the river and taught them how to watch carefully. They noted when the enemy scouts arrived, and then sent signals to Logan. Eric and Mia used these signals to adjust positions and prepare for movement. Logan reminded everyone to be patient. Patience would win the battle without risking many lives. Villagers helped by carrying food to the soldiers and also by hiding supplies near the river, so if the enemy got close, they could be trapped without hurting anyone. Unnecessary. Logan believed that protecting people was as important as winning the battle. He trained the younger soldiers to move quietly and think before acting. They learned to use simple tricks like hiding in shadows, or using sticks to create noise in the wrong place, so the enemy would be confused. Logan's plan was to weaken the enemy slowly. First, they watched them make mistakes. Then they used these mistakes to stop small groups at a time. Eric and his archers would shoot from hidden hills and force the enemy to move differently every time. Logan wanted the enemy to tire and become frustrated. He knew that even a strong army could fall if they were confused and divided. As days passed, the enemy grew more reckless. They thought that Logan's army was small and weak because of the decoy camps. They even sent soldiers to attack areas that were empty. Logan watched carefully and prepared to trap them. They used fallen trees and hidden pits to slow the enemy soldiers. Logan was always near the front lines, guiding the small attacks. He never rushed the full army because that was not his plan. He wanted to win with brains, not with force. Mia suggested using a small bridge over the river to lure the enemy into a narrow space. Logan agreed, and they placed barriers and signals to guide the enemy. There, he told the soldiers to hide and wait for the enemy to come closer. He explained that when the time came, they would act together and create confusion, so the enemy could not escape easily. Logan also spent time talking to each soldier, encouraging them. He said that every small move counted and that even the youngest could make a difference. The soldiers listened and learned. They began to think for themselves and watch for changes in the enemy movements. Logan believed that teaching them to think ahead made them stronger than just giving orders. One evening, the enemy scouts moved too close to the river. They did not notice the traps and decoy camps. Logan gave a signal and Eric and the archers fired arrows near them without hitting anyone. The scouts ran in fear, thinking the full army was ready for them. Logan smiled. Because his plan worked once again, he knew that the enemy would now be cautious and slow, giving Logan's army more chances to act first. As night came, Logan gathered his friends around the fire. They discussed the next steps and what the enemy might do. Logan reminded them that they must always think ahead and never be careless. Every victory so far was because they used their minds and watched carefully. He also praised the villagers for helping and told them that their courage and trust made the army stronger. Logan slept little that night. He thought about the next traps and plans. He wanted the enemy to make mistakes, and he wanted his army to be ready for all possibilities. He believed that the day would come when they could defeat the full enemy army with careful planning and intelligence. Not by fighting with swords alone. He felt ready for that day and knew his soldiers and the villagers trusted him to lead them to victory. Logan walked along the hilltops and watched the enemy moving slowly. They had grown tired from trying to find Logan's army. He called Mia and Eric to join him. They discussed where to place the next traps and how to slow the army even more. Logan knew the human Queen Victoria was waiting for news, so he sent messages to tell her that everything was under control. He asked Claire and Luke to watch from the forest edges and report Every movement they saw, the children learned quickly and could signal with flags and stones without making noise. Logan used their reports to plan small skirmishes that forced the enemy to split into groups and take longer routes. He told his soldiers that winning was about making the enemy waste energy and hope. Logan also used the villagers to help spread rumors about his army. They made sure the enemy heard that Logan's forces were larger and stronger than they really were. This caused confusion and fear in the enemy ranks. The soldiers under Logan were careful not to hurt anyone, and only used these tricks to slow and tire the enemy, not to harm people needlessly. One day, Logan saw a large group of enemy soldiers trying to move through a narrow path between two hills. He immediately planned an ambush. He placed small teams along the hills to block and confuse them. Eric led archers from behind rocks, while Mia and her team used sticks and stones to make noises that sounded like a larger army. The enemy soldiers panicked and ran in different directions. Logan made sure no one was seriously hurt. He wanted to win with brains, not with blood. Logan also trained the young boys and girls from the villages to help carry messages and supplies. They learned how to be quiet and move quickly. He believed that teaching everyone to think and act made the whole group stronger. The soldiers began to see that every person had a role and that small actions make a big difference in the battle. He spent time each day with Eric and Mia to plan the next steps. They marked paths, hills, and valleys on maps and noted where the enemy was most likely to pass. Logan reminded them that the key to victory was patience and watching carefully. He said that rushing would only give the enemy a chance to fight back. One night, the enemy tried to attack near the river. They thought Logan's army was sleeping, but Logan had already placed scouts along the path. They sent signals, and the soldiers moved quietly to the hiding spots. Logan led a small group to guide them without being seen. The enemy was confused because they could not find the army. They thought they were surrounded, and this fear slowed their advance. Logan encouraged his soldiers and told them that strategy was their greatest weapon. He reminded them that courage alone was not enough, and that using their minds could protect lives and win battles. The soldiers listened and followed every plan. Carefully, they saw how the smaller moves of archers and scouts could stop larger groups without using strength alone. He also spoke to the human Queen Victoria and told her how the villagers were helping and how well his soldiers were learning to act smart and think ahead. The Queen sent more supplies and a few extra soldiers to help with the plans. Logan trained them to work with the villagers and use every small advantage. The extra soldiers brought energy and strength, but Logan made sure they used it wisely. Days passed, and Logan noticed the enemy was losing hope. They did not know where to go or how to act. He used this to place more traps and small attacks that confused them further. He asked Claire and Luke to watch the hills for enemy movements and report back every change. Logan felt proud, because even the young children were helping to protect the city, and the soldiers were learning to act smart and not waste energy on useless fights. Logan spent nights thinking about the final stage of the plan. He knew the enemy would try to reach the human Queen Victoria city soon. He wanted everything ready so the army could act together and stop the enemy without risking too many lives. He believed that the day of victory would come when strategy, patience, and courage worked together to protect everyone and win the battle. Logan studied the narrow canyon where the enemy army was moving. He called Eric and Mia to show them the place. They walked carefully along the cliffs and found the best spots to hide and block the enemy. Logan explained that the canyon would make the army slow and allow small groups to confuse them. He told the soldiers to use their minds and act with patience to make the enemy make mistakes. He placed archers on the hills above the canyon. Eric led them quietly and taught them to aim without being seen. Mia arranged small teams along the canyon edges to block paths and make noises that would sound like a larger army. Logan also instructed the villagers to hide nearby with supplies and signals. They could help the soldiers if needed without being noticed by the enemy. Logan sent Claire and Luke to watch the enemy movements from trees. They signaled when enemy scouts approached the canyon. Logan used this information to direct the soldiers and place traps at the right spots. He told the teams to wait until the enemy was in the right place and then act. Together, he reminded everyone that timing was important and rushing could ruin the plan. As the enemy entered the canyon, Logan gave signals using small mirrors and stones. The archers fired arrows near them without hitting anyone. This forced the enemy soldiers to stop and change direction. The small teams along the edges created sounds that made the enemy think they were Surrounded soldiers ran back and forth. Confused, Logan smiled because his plan was working. He moved along the front lines, quietly giving instructions and helping the soldiers find better positions. He reminded them to watch carefully and not to waste energy on unnecessary fights. Every small move was part of a larger plan. Eric and Mia coordinated the teams so that all actions happened at the same time, making the enemy panic without understanding why. Logan also sent small teams to block possible escape routes. The enemy soldiers did not know the terrain well and trusted their leaders too much. They ran into obstacles and small pits that Logan's team prepared in advance of the soldiers. Learned to use simple tricks to guide the enemy and protect themselves. At the same time, Logan believed that intelligence could win over strength. The villagers watched safely from hidden positions. They carried messages and small supplies to the soldiers. When needed, Logan praised them and told them that their courage and quick thinking was as important as the soldiers' skills. The young boys and girls learned to move quietly and signal using stones and sticks. They became an important part of the plan without even fighting directly. As the day passed, the enemy grew tired and disorganized. They did not know where to go. Logan used this to place more traps and force them into smaller groups. Eric and Mia guided these moves carefully and signaled every step. Logan reminded everyone that patience and timing could make even a larger army weak and confused. The soldiers followed every order and acted with careful thought. Logan thought about the human Queen Victoria and knew she would be proud of the careful planning. He sent a message to her explaining the actions and how the enemy was trapped. Without serious harm to anyone, the Queen sent more supplies and small groups of soldiers to help at night. Logan trained them to work with his men, and the villagers, they learned to think ahead and act as part of the larger plan. By the end of the day, the enemy soldiers were disorganized, tired, and frightened. They did not know how to fight back or where to go. Logan and his team had used their minds to outsmart the enemy without unnecessary battles. He gathered the soldiers and villagers to explain the next steps and to prepare for the final moves. He knew the day of victory was near, and that strategy, patience, and teamwork would bring success to everyone under his command. Logan watched the enemy soldiers as they tried to leave the canyon. They were tired, confused, and afraid. He signaled Eric and Mia to guide the soldiers from hidden positions. The archers fired arrows near the enemy to block them and create more confusion. The small teams along the edges used stones and sticks to make noises that sounded like a larger army. The enemy thought they were surrounded and stopped moving. Logan moved quietly among his soldiers, giving instructions and keeping them calm. He called Claire and Luke to check for any enemy soldiers trying to escape. They reported every movement quickly and quietly. Logan used this information to adjust the positions of his soldiers and make sure that no enemy could reach the city. The villagers helped by carrying messages and small supplies to the teams. Logan praised them and told them that their courage and attention made a big difference. The enemy generals were frustrated. They did not understand how a smaller force could control such a large army. Logan used this to plan small attacks that made the enemy split into groups and fight against their own mistakes. The soldiers followed every order and acted without hesitation. They learned from Logan that thinking carefully and acting together was stronger than using force alone. Logan also planned to protect the human Queen Victoria. The city was ready for the enemy, but he did not want unnecessary fighting near the walls. He arranged teams to watch the approaches and use signals to guide the villagers and soldiers. The Queen trusted Logan completely and sent supplies and extra soldiers to help with the final moves. Logan trained them quickly to follow his plans and act as part of the larger strategy. As night came, Logan gathered his closest soldiers. He explained that the final steps would need careful timing. They had to act together and use every small advantage they had built over days. The soldiers felt confident and ready. They knew that patience, intelligence, and teamwork were the keys to victory. Logan reminded them that courage alone could not win the battle the next day. The enemy tried to move in larger groups to escape the canyon. Logan had already prepared for this. He used small squads to block paths and archers to guide them without direct confrontation. The enemy soldiers became tired and confused. They did not know which way to go. Logan moved along the front lines, making sure every soldier knew their role. He reminded them that every small action counted and that thinking ahead was stronger than strength. Mia and Eric led teams to create small noises and traps to confuse the enemy further. Logan used signals to coordinate their movements. He watched carefully and adjusted plans as needed. The villagers and young helpers carried messages and supplies to keep everyone informed. Logan believed that using the minds of many was stronger than relying on a few strong fighters as the day passed the enemy. Army grew weaker and more disorganized. Logan saw that his strategy had worked. They could no longer fight as a single force and many soldiers. Surrendered without battle, the soldiers under Logan felt proud because they had used their minds and teamwork to control the enemy without risking. Many lives. Logan praised everyone for patience and intelligence. After the enemy retreated, Logan returned to human Queen Victoria and reported the result: the city was safe and the enemy defeated without large battles. The Queen thanked him and praised the courage and intelligence of his soldiers and the villagers. Logan remained humble. He knew that the victory was not about glory, but about protecting people and using strategy wisely. Logan gathered the soldiers and villagers and explained that this victory was proof that minds could be stronger than swords. Patience could win over strength and teamwork could protect many lives. The young boys and girls learned that thinking ahead and helping carefully was as important as fighting. They felt proud to be part of the army and the community. Logan looked at the valley once more. He knew that the story of the strategic genius who outsmarted an entire army would be told for generations to teach. That intelligence, courage, and cooperation could achieve what seemed impossible. He felt ready to face any challenge with the same mind and careful planning, knowing that victory came from thinking wisely and working together.